Hello fellow watercolorists out there. Got some Christmas money burning a hole in your pocket? Well, I might have an idea about that. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor, everybody. Hope you all had a great Christmas.
Where have you been, Steve?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been really busy. Just a lot of stuff going on in the holidays, but we got some cool stuff planned for 2015, some great videos, and I think you guys are going to love it. Everybody say hello to my studio assistant, Reese. You know, I've been wanting to try out these Graphitint pencils for quite a while. They're not new. I think they're probably 5-6 years old. Now, if you don't know anything about them, the idea is that they combine graphite with a hint of color in what's like a watercolor pencil. They're really very unique. If you use them and you start building up the color on your paper, you'll notice the black tones of the graphite tend to build up over the color, and it's just kind of like their description says. It's just a very muted color, very muted tones. When you add water, more of the color activates and they become a little more vibrant. Now they're still fairly muted, but it's just a real interesting kind of a mix. This is what I'm going to be reviewing. This is the 24 set, and this is the entire range of color. There are a few places online where you can actually order the individual pencils. Otherwise, they're set up in 3 sets. A 6 pencil, a 12 pencil, and a 24 pencil set. Now, a couple things about this set. The color names and the color indicators on the pencils. And by indicators, I'm talking about these little pencil ends down here, and the names of the colors that they put on the pencils. They are not very helpful. They don't really tell you what color you're going to get. For instance, the only thing in the whole set that's even close to a yellow is this one called Sage. It says Sage, which normally I would think of as a green. The cap on the end looks like a sepia or a brown. When you apply it and actually put water to it, it looks kind of like a muted yellow ochre. But you might want to create your own watercolor chart. Now you can download this one. I got this is a PDF that I printed out from the Derwent site, and it's pretty accurate, but their color swatches are dark. They only show what it would look like if you put down a very heavy application. If you wanted a more realistic application and wanted to wet it out, I would create my own color chart. I haven't done a complete one, but I started. I wanted to kind of get an idea what I would use out of the set for flesh tones, so I started my own little swatch tests. Down in the description, I'll put links to these PDFs that you can download if you're interested in these pencils, and you can download the PDFs and print them out, and the Derwent site where it actually talks about these pencils. But let's get into it and see what we come up with. Well, I've decided to work on this portrait, just regular pencil, just to give me a guide, and I'm going to use the Graphitint pencils on top of this. By the way, you are seeing me use these. Other than a couple impromptu swatch tests, you're seeing me use these for the very first time in an actual painting. So, keeping the application light right now because I just want to build this up in glazes and successive applications and see what will happen. I'm going to start activating some of this color. I'm going to go very carefully. I'm almost using a dry brush right now. I'm just being very timid with this. And I just need to add some dark value over on the side of his face, so I'm just activating a lot of it now. And I'll start layering this side of his face where the shadow falls. I'm using an Arches hot press watercolor block, 140 pound. It's a very smooth surface, so for very tight control of pencil, it's a good one. to use. I can tell you already, I am just loving this medium. Just from the first time I heard about it, I felt like there was going to be something about it that I was going to get along with really well. Nice. It erases very well. Light applications erase with no problem. I didn't need to erase that, but I just wanted to see. Heavy applications. Are coming up. They're pretty much like with graphite, you know, they're leaving a little residue. But I mean, stink, that is really cool. Here's the swatch test I did that I showed you at the beginning of the video. You can probably see it a little better here. These are the tones I'm primarily using for the flesh tones, since I needed a pretty accurate indication of what would work. Port and sage, and I have sage again down here, cool brown, and autumn brown, cocoa, and chestnut. Closest color to an actual flesh tone as is was this chestnut. When it's tinted out, it has a kind of a flesh tone look. It really is important that you take and make these swatch tests yourself, even if it's just for the few colors you plan to use in a drawing. Just establishing some background dark values here. I'll try to add a little kind of wash character to it, to the background. Keep this part a little looser. I don't know if you can see this, but where the pencil's over dry paper, you get the tooth of the paper and you get the texture of the paper. If the paper's slightly damp, you get a much smoother kind of a pencil stroke. It's kind of interesting effect. Now, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about when I say these terms, activation just simply means adding water to a dry application of watercolor pencil. When you activate watercolor pencil, you get your strongest, most vibrant pigment. Once that activation dries, it's basically like any other watercolor paint. It's just a wash on paper. You can re-wet it and work it a little bit, but it never moves or becomes quite as vibrant and easy to manipulate as it does when you first activate a dry pencil. That's the most common way of doing a watercolor pencil, is a dry application and then an activation with the water from a brush. Well, I think this has been a pretty successful test. I'm really happy with these pencils. But here's a couple tips. As you add pencil that you plan to go back and rework with a brush, work small areas at a time. I found that it's real easy to forget where you've put pencil and you may get unexpected results. If you want to just make subtle changes or adjustments to your painting, of course you can just apply colored pencil in areas and just leave it and not reactivate it. But just remember that if you go back, you might re-wet or reactivate areas that you've forgotten about. So just keep that in mind. Also, another tip about these, you'll see they have a sort of washed out appearance. So keep in mind that's a limitation of the medium. Because of the graphite, it does look like you've mixed graphite with paint. So it's difficult to get real dark and deep in areas where you want it to be dark and deep. This is actually midnight black from the pencil, this area up here, and it is almost impossible to get anything more than just a gray. The same in these deep tones in here. Once you activate it, the graphite kind of comes into play and it makes it sort of a washed out medium. I do think that these pencils probably make a better sketching medium for like sketchbooks and whatnot than for actual painting, but hey, that's just a personal preference. You can decide that on your own. Yet one more tip is, and this is true of any watercolor pencil, if you don't want to put down pencil anymore, because pencil tends to be a little bit heavy-handed, and then re-wet that. That's kind of a two-stage step, you know, shading, re-wetting, or activating. Hold your pencil up like this with the damp brush. You can just flick it over the end of the pencil to add a subtle bit of tone here and there, just adjusting. That allows you to just like wash over very subtle areas with a very tinted out wash. Another tip for that is the paper palette for any watercolor pencil. It works just as well with these. If you're working an area and you want to add some of those same subtle washes, just make yourself a little paper palette. And this is only if you don't want to bother with getting out your paints. Regular watercolors mix very well with these, so you can do that. But if you don't want to bother with that, just pull out a piece of paper and make yourself a quick little paper palette. And voila! You can add some subtle tints and values to your painting that way. So maybe those tips will help you out. So you guys give those a try. I hope you enjoy using them as much as I did. I think they're just a really neat pencil. Just keep in mind of that slightly dusty appearance that you would expect to get with a graphite pencil, and not being able to get very, very deep tones like you might with pure watercolor paint out of a tube. But given those limitations, it's just a neat pencil to play around with. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. You have made my year. Being such a new channel, just having started it in late June, early July, you guys have just really responded, and I can't tell you how much fun I've had doing that this year. Look forward to some really great stuff in 2015. I think we're going to have a lot of fun, and in the new year I'm going to start off with a giveaway just to thank all my subscribers. But until then, we will see you next time.